Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Shauna Moran, and I am a coach to leaders and managers of remote and hybrid teams. I help them to reduce burnout and increase performance, both within their teams and within themselves. And on that note, today, I'm going to be diving a little bit into my book. If you have not heard of my book, I released this at the end of 2022. It's called Managing Employee Burnout: How to Develop a Happy, Healthy, and Engaged Workforce. And it's more important than ever before. That's really why I wrote this book, because, in 2020, when everybody shifted to remote working, I was inundated with so many organizations that needed support to support their remote teams, their hybrid teams. And one topic that kept coming up time and time again was, my team are burnt out. What do I do? So that became the area for me to specialize in over the last 3 years. And because I did that, I was able to dive into research, dive into real life scenarios and situations, and really experiment with organizations to establish, number one, what is the root cause of burnout within ourselves, within our teams. And from there, once we understand the root causes, we can create meaningful solutions that are actually going to work. And this is exactly what I cover in the book. It is for managers, for leaders, and for HR executives, for CEOs, for founders, because the book is divided into 3 sections, right? Because there's 3 main pillars of root causes when it comes to burnout. First of all, there's the self. So how are we ourselves understanding and managing our own stress, right? What is that level of self-awareness that we have? My last video I did was on people pleasing in the workplace. So how are we aware of some of the tendencies that we have, or the habits that we have, or the ways of being, or the beliefs that we have that are holding us back from feeling well and being able to reduce and manage our stress? So the self is a huge piece, a huge pillar that can be quite complex as well. The second one is the leader, right? So the manager of teams. Leaders have such a high degree of influence over their team's well-being and engagement and everything else. But there are certain key pillars of leadership influence that we need to be looking at when it comes to how do we reduce our team's burnout. And the third pillar is the organization. So as organizations, how are we setting ourselves up for success in terms of our processes, for example? And the most common example I give here is for managers and for teams that are stuck in back-to-back meetings all day, every day. So if our processes on an organizational level aren't correct, our people are going to experience heightened stress that ultimately can turn into burnout. Because that's what burnout is, right? It is stress that, by the way, we all experience. Stress is a normal part of being a human being. But burnout happens when stress isn't actively managed. So over time, if we continue to experience heightened stress, we don't actively manage it, which means we don't change anything, that's when burnout can happen. So the problem is still very prominent today with a lot of the work that I do. The research is showing us a lot of the same. And the scariest piece of research I read recently was a piece of research by Slack that said 43% of mid-level managers are experiencing burnout themselves. Now, does that come as a surprise to you watching this video? How can we expect our managers or ourselves to support anybody else when we are so deeply struggling ourselves? How can we expect ourselves to show up if we are really burnt out and can't think straight, right? So this is what my book is all about, and I'm going to share just a couple of key pieces with you today from the book. My main vision with this book was to support people in feeling less alone, because that really breaks my heart when I see professionals, the amazing professionals that really care about their work, that really care about making an impact, and they're experiencing burnout and they think it's just them and they think it's their fault. When it's not the case at all. Burnout is a systemic issue. It's not an individual issue. Sure, we can work on ourselves and it does require us to learn more about ourselves, that's for sure. But there's a lot of other potential root causes within there that as managers, we can influence, as organizations, we can change. But really, it's about diving deep into this work and looking at potentially where we are not serving ourselves, where we're not serving our team. And that takes courage to look at. It's very easy to just, if our team are experiencing burnout, to increase our wellness spend and say, okay, well, the wellness budget is increased, everything's going to be fine. It's just those particular people, they experience that, but that's not the norm for us. So we'll increase that wellness budget and everything will be fine. We'll run some training, everything will be fine. And that's not the case. I explore in the book how much time and money organizations are spending on wellness, and it's not actually serving the problem. That is burnout. So I could talk about this all day. I'm not going to do that. If anybody wants to talk about it all day, please do get in contact. But one thing that I did want to share here is at the end of each chapter, I share reflection questions, because reflection questions support us in getting to know ourselves better, and getting us to think in new ways. And that's really important, because when we're experiencing stress, we can feel very isolated, we can feel very alone. And it's really important that we have the opportunity to think about new solutions, new ways, and identify some of the causes for ourselves. Okay, so I just want to share some reflection questions for you as a leader to support yourself as a leader in understanding your own stress, but also to support you in identifying this within your team. And, I talk here about the importance of leading by example. As a leader, if you're not feeling good in yourself, that's the first place you need to start, right? You have to put on your own oxygen mask first. So, some questions for you. Number one, what are the indicators that inform me that I'm experiencing heightened stress at work? So, what are the indicators? It could be physical, mental, emotional. Number two, how do I identify burnout symptoms within myself? So, what are some of the symptoms that you have? So, for example, some of my clients might say, I struggle to switch off from work. I can't stop thinking about work. I struggle to sleep because I'm thinking about work. It could be all of these things or other. Now, the most important question, what can you do for yourself when you experience those symptoms? So, for example, one of your symptoms might be, I struggle to sleep at night because I'm thinking about work. So that is an indicator to me that my stress levels are really high and I need to do something about it. So what can I do when I am going to sleep at night and I can't stop thinking about work? Is it that you can have a notepad and pen and write down everything that's in your head? Is it that you can go for a walk or do a meditation or even have a shower before you go to bed and visualize washing the day off yourself? What is it that actually works for you? What support can I leverage when I experience these symptoms? Another really important question. What's your support that you have? Is it that you have a leader yourself that you can speak to, a colleague, a friend, a partner, a coach? If you don't have that support, P.S., we have a free Facebook community called The Thriving Leader. I'll leave it in the description below. It's a great support resource for managers that are looking to create more impact without burnout. So join our community. The next question, how am I leading by example in promoting well-being at work? And this can be a tricky one, right? Like, it can be tough to actually admit that, well, I'm overworking. I'm working too much and it's not setting a good example for my team. So ask yourself, what might I change about how I lead by example? So These are really important questions for leaders to be asking themselves all of the time. I also want to share some reflection questions for you in managing your team. Number one, how do you identify burnout within your team members? What are the red flags that indicate my team is experiencing heightened stress? Now, bearing in mind, this answer might change depending on the team member because we all experience stress in different ways. So, I would even look at writing down each team member and giving the answer beside each of their names. If you come across a team member and you're like, I don't know how Michael experiences stress because I don't know him well enough, then that's a good opportunity for you to start looking into that in your one-to-one conversations. Having those conversations, getting to understand what feels stressful for Michael and how does stress present itself and what support does he typically need when he has that at work. Looking at then, once you have the symptoms that each team member experiences, what action can I take to support them when they're experiencing these symptoms? So, in this case, you might not know either. So, again, when you see these symptoms, it's about addressing it up front and asking your team member, what does support look like to you right now? What's the most meaningful support that I can show up with during this time? What is going to be the most beneficial thing for us to talk about, to coach on, to discuss in our one-to-one? And the final reflection question for supporting your team through stress is, how can I be more proactive in mitigating these problems ahead of time amongst my team? So when you can start to identify each person's stress indicators, and then you can talk about the causes of that, you might be able to identify some patterns within your team, just like you've identified patterns within yourself. And if you can support your team members in identifying that for themselves, then everyone is empowered to understand their own stress and be better able to manage that and communicate that. Because the problem is when we don't talk about it and we just keep going and try to fix it ourselves. And this is what happens when managers say to me, Shauna, I've just lost a team member and I just didn't see it coming, right? So this is what happens is people try to deal with it on their own. Managers aren't aware of the red flags. They're not having active conversations around that to move through it together. And these things happen. So taking some time to do those reflections, I would love to know what answers you came up with and how helpful that was for you. As always, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. Please do subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments below, what is it that you would like to hear about in our upcoming videos? Give me some of the topics that would be most helpful for you. And as I said, the Thriving Leader is a free community that I've created on Facebook where mid-level managers of remote and hybrid teams come together to learn, to grow, to share, and to support one another. So you're more than welcome to join that. You can click the link in the description. And until next time, look after yourselves and take care.